The chamber lights flickered as the feed from the outer defense array snapped into focus. Across the central holoscreen, a fleet of black silhouettes stretched into the void, each ship casting long shadows against the starfield. The delegates gathered inside the Galactic Council chamber froze in silence, their voices caught between fear and disbelief. The Council had seen war fleets before, but nothing like this. These were not the slender, diplomatic cruisers they were accustomed to, nor the elegant arcships of the Elvari. These vessels were wide, angular, and bristling with weapons. They looked designed not for deterrence, but for destruction. Councillor Seraphan's scaled hand tightened against the railing in front of him. "How many are there?" His voice trembled, low but carried across the room by the chamber's acoustics. The technician at the console hesitated before answering. 37 Dreadnought-class vessels. Dozens of destroyers. Carrier signatures as well. The young officer swallowed, his mandibles clicking. All bearing Earth insignia. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Humanity. That backwater world the Council had admitted only 50 years earlier, tolerated because of their stubborn persistence and rapid growth. No one expected them to wield this kind of power. No one expected them to march into Council space without so much as a warning. The chamber erupted. Shouts overlapped, different languages mixing into chaos. Some demanded immediate retaliation. Others whispered about betrayal. A few, silent but pale, realized what it meant if those ships had come for war. Seraphan steadied himself, forcing his voice over the uproar. "Summon their commander. Now, before this escalates further." The holoscreen shifted, the chaotic chatter fading as a new image replaced the fleet. A man appeared, seated in a command chair aboard one of the monstrous ships. His uniform was dark, lined with subtle insignia, but it was not the attire of an ambassador. His presence was sharp, like a drawn blade. His gaze scanned the council chamber as if he were the one presiding over it. "Admiral Marcus Kane," Seraphan said, his throat dry. "You arrive without request, without sanction. You violate sacred boundaries of this council. Explain yourself." For a moment, Kane said nothing. The silence stretched, thick with unspoken threat. Behind him, on his ship's bridge, humans moved with disciplined precision, their faces grim and focused. These were not soldiers paraded for ceremony. These were people ready for war. Finally, Kane spoke, his voice calm, steady, and unyielding. "We didn't come to ask permission." The words dropped like iron across the chamber. Some delegates hissed in outrage, others stared in shock, and a few lowered their eyes as if already conceding. Seraphan felt his breath catch. The arrogance, the defiance, the raw certainty, it shook the very foundation of what the council had built. He forced himself to respond. "You risk destabilizing the galaxy itself. Why would humanity invite this chaos?" Kane leaned forward in his chair, the faint hum of his ship audible through the feed. His eyes locked on Seraphan, then on every counselor watching. "Because while you argue and stall, something worse is coming. And when it does, you'll thank us for not waiting on your permission." The chamber fell silent again. A silence that felt heavier than any roar of battle. And then the defense array sirens returned, announcing another fleet signature on the edges of the system. This time it wasn't human. The second alarm cut through the chamber like a blade. Council delegates turned back toward the great holoscreen, voices rising in a dissonant wave. Across the display, the darkness shifted, new signatures forming at the edge of the system. Their shapes were different from the human dreadnoughts. These ships were elongated, twisted in design, plated with jagged armor that caught the starlight like knives. Even in static display they radiated menace. The technician's voice cracked as he read the scan. Ketheri Dominion. Multiple carriers. Battleships. Escorts beyond count. The chamber nearly dissolved into chaos. One delegate shouted for immediate evacuation, another shrieked about mobilizing planetary shields, while several tried to shout down their neighbors. The normally calculated council looked like prey animals cornered by predators. Admiral Kane did not flinch. His image on the screen remained steady, his crew around him silent, waiting. Councillor Seraphan slammed a clawed hand against his console, voice cutting across the chamber. "Quiet." The room slowly fell under his command, though the fear was still painted across every face. He turned back to the Admiral. "You knew. That is why you came." Kane gave a small nod, his voice deliberate, each word sharpened by resolve. "We intercepted their transmissions 3 days ago. The Dominion has broken your treaties. They are here to cut through Council space, enslave colonies, burn what they cannot take. And you," he gestured toward the counselors, would still be arguing about what statement to issue when their ships are already in orbit. A murmur spread. Not indignation this time, but shame, though few would admit it aloud. One counselor, a thin, bird-like figure from the Yari, tried to push back. We had channels open with the Dominion. Negotiations. Agreements. Kane's expression didn't shift. The Kethari don't negotiate. They stall, they promise, and then they take. You knew it. You just hoped they would skip your worlds and go after someone else. The council chamber bristled. It was too direct, too cutting, but no one contradicted him. On the human flagship Resolute, Commander Ruth Gallagher leaned closer to Kane, her voice low, private. You're not exactly making friends down there. Kane's jaw tightened. I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to stop the Dominion. Gallagher shook her head, frustration boiling beneath her calm exterior. Charging into council space with 37 dreadnoughts and no warning? You've put every alliance Earth has at risk. If this backfires, Earth will stand alone. Kane glanced at her. For a moment, his stern facade cracked, and there was something almost personal in his tone. My sister's colony is in their path, Ruth. 500,000 civilians with no defenses. If we waited for the council to grow a spine, they'd already be gone. Gallagher hesitated, caught between duty and empathy. She wanted to argue, but the truth was there in his eyes. This wasn't only about politics. It was survival, and Kane carried it like a weight he could never set down. Back in the council chamber, Seraphan straightened. His scales shimmered under the lights, his voice rising with a steadiness that surprised even him. Then what is your plan, Admiral? You arrive uninvited, you expose the truth, but now you stand between the council and annihilation. What will humanity do? The holoscreen shifted as Kane leaned forward in his chair. Behind him, the massive window of the Dreadnought bridge revealed the looming Kethari fleet. His answer was calm, unshaken, and terrifying in its certainty. We'll hold the line. A hush fell again. The weight of the words rippled through the chamber. Gallagher's hands clenched behind her back. She had heard that tone before, the one Kane used when he had already decided on a path, no matter the cost. She wanted to believe in it, but the sheer size of the Kethari Armada made her stomach twist. Seraphan finally exhaled, scales dulling in resignation. Then you risk not just your world but all of ours. And you dare to do it without permission. Kane's gaze swept across the council one last time. Permission won't save you. Action will. Decide quickly whether you stand with us, or hide behind procedure while the Dominion tears through your homes. The feed cut without warning, leaving the chamber in silence once more. Delegates began to whisper, arguments already forming, but Seraphan didn't join them. His eyes lingered on the empty screen, haunted by the realization that the council had already lost control. Humanity hadn't just arrived. Humanity had forced their hand. And outside, in the cold dark of space, the first wave of Kethari warships accelerated toward the system. The stars stretched into lines of fire as the Kethari fleet surged forward. Their ships were not elegant war machines, but monstrous blades of metal and hate, jagged hulls bristling with weapons, their formation loose and predatory, as if they were hunting rather than marching into battle. On the bridge of the Resolute, Admiral Kane stood at the center of the command ring. Around him, officers moved with precision, their voices steady but tight with the weight of what was coming. Every screen was alive with data, enemy trajectories, shield readouts, weapons calibrations. The ship thrummed with restrained energy, waiting for his command. Gallagher stood at his side, arms folded, jaw set hard. She didn't speak, not yet. She knew the moment words left her mouth, it would be an argument, and there wasn't time. The dreadnoughts of Earth drifted into formation, their hulls reflecting the glow of nearby stars. They looked like steel mountains in motion, each one a fortress of cannons, missile bays, and layered shields. They were not as sleek as council fleets, nor as graceful, but they radiated a brutal practicality. Humanity had built them to survive wars no one else thought could be fought. A calm officer turned, his voice clipped. Enemy ships entering weapons range. Awaiting orders, Admiral. Kane's gaze stayed on the viewport, where the Kethari vanguard loomed like an eclipse. He raised one hand, steady as stone. All ships, hold fire. A ripple of disbelief moved through the bridge. Gallagher finally spoke, her voice sharp. Marcus, if we wait, they'll tear through us before we get the chance to strike. He didn't look at her. They want us to panic. We don't give them the first shot. Seconds stretched into an eternity. The Kethari fleet drew closer, filling the viewport until the stars themselves seemed swallowed by their bulk. Then, with a flash like the sky tearing open, the first enemy salvo ripped across the void. Brace. The Resolute shuddered, shields flaring as energy blasts hammered against them. Sparks rained from one of the consoles, crew scrambling to keep systems online. The roar of impact reverberated through the hull, a reminder that even mountains could bleed. Kane's voice cut through the chaos, calm but fierce. Return fire. The void lit up. Earth's dreadnoughts unleashed their fury, heavy cannons thundering in coordinated volleys. Beams of searing light and kinetic slugs tore into the enemy formation. The first Ketheri cruiser exploded in a blossom of fire, fragments spinning off into the dark. Another ship lost its shields in seconds, hull rupturing under the relentless assault. For a moment, humanity struck harder than anyone expected. The bridge of the Resolute vibrated with the rhythm of its weapons, like the beating heart of defiance. Officers shouted firing solutions, shield percentages, casualty reports, their voices layered but precise. But the Ketheri didn't break. They absorbed losses like predators taking wounds that only made them hungrier. Their second wave surged forward, weaving between wreckage, releasing clouds of drones that swarmed like a black tide. Gallagher's eyes widened as one of the drones tore into a council convoy struggling to retreat. Civilian transports lit up with distress calls, their fragile hulls crumpling under the swarm. She turned to Kane, voice urgent. Those ships aren't going to last. We have to cover them. They're not our priority, Kane replied, his focus still on the battle ahead. Gallagher stepped closer, her tone sharp enough to cut. If we abandon them now, you'll prove every council fear about us being nothing but warlords. You think they'll follow us after watching us let civilians burn? For a heartbeat, Kane didn't answer. His jaw clenched, the weight of command pressing down on him like gravity. Then he barked to the helm. Divert fire support to cover the convoy. Launch the escort wings. The Resolute banked hard, Dreadnought cannons shifting to blast through the drones. Fighters screamed into the void, Earth pilots carving open a path for the convoys. Gallagher's call had saved them, though it left gaps in the line. Kane didn't say a word, but his silence was louder than thanks. The battle raged. One of Earth's dreadnoughts, the Ironclad, took a direct hit from a Ketheri battleship. Its shields collapsed, flames erupting across its hull. On the bridge of the Resolute, everyone watched as the Ironclad's captain rammed her burning ship into the enemy vessel, detonating in a blaze that tore both ships apart. The bridge went quiet for half a second, the sacrifice hanging in the air like smoke. Gallagher's throat tightened, but Kane only said, "Mark her name. We'll honor her later. Right now, focus." The crew obeyed. The human line closed the gap, but the cost was carved into their expressions. Then came the shift. "Admiral," the sensor officer said, panic slipping into his voice. Massive energy spike detected from the Ketheri flagship. "It's charging something." Kane turned sharply. On the viewport, the enemy flagship loomed larger than the rest, its hull lined with unfamiliar arrays now glowing with an eerie light. The energy readings climbed higher, far beyond standard weaponry. Gallagher's stomach dropped. "That's not just a weapon. That's..." The screen blazed white as the flagship unleashed its charge. A wave of raw energy tore across the battlefield, ripping through space itself. Council fleets caught in the blast disintegrated in an instant, ships vaporized before their distress calls even finished. The shockwave slammed into the Resolute, its shields screaming under the strain. The lights flickered. Consoles sparked. Crew were thrown to the floor. Gallagher gripped the rail until her knuckles turned white, her heart hammering in her chest. The shields held, but just barely. Humanity's ships survived what had annihilated entire fleets. Kane stood in the smoke and chaos, his voice low but steady. "They have a superweapon." The crew exchanged looks, horror in their eyes. Humanity had faced fleets before. But this was something else. Gallagher turned to Kane, her voice raw. "If they fire that again, we're finished." Kane didn't move, his gaze locked on the monstrous flagship glowing in the distance. "Then we don't give them the chance." The blast wave had faded, but the silence that followed carried its own weight. The wreckage of council ships drifted in glowing fragments across the void, entire fleets erased as though they had never existed. Emergency beacons pulsed from shattered hulls, cries for help overlapping across comm channels until they became a single chorus of desperation. On the Resolute's bridge, smoke lingered in the air, the acrid scent of burnt circuitry biting at every breath. Crew members staggered back into place, bandaging wounds, replacing ruined consoles. The shields held, but only just. Commander Gallagher's voice cracked the silence. "That weapon, if they fire it again, there won't be anyone left to fight back." Admiral Kane stood unmoving, staring at the enemy flagship, its hull still glowing with residual energy. His face was pale but composed, his mind already 2 steps ahead. Then we find its weakness. Or we die trying. Gallagher shook her head. That's not a plan. That's suicide. Before Kane could answer, the comms officer stiffened at his console. Admiral, incoming secure transmission from the council chamber. Priority 1. Kane gave a curt nod. Put it through. The holoscreen flared to life, revealing the council chamber in chaos. Delegates shouted over one another, their faces filled with terror, rage, and calculation. Some demanded immediate surrender, others screamed for retaliation. It was a scene of collapse, authority crumbling in real time. Counselor Seraphan finally cut through the noise, his scales dull with exhaustion. Admiral Kane, the council demands you withdraw. Humanity's presence has escalated this conflict beyond containment. Retreat now before the Dominion directs its full attention to Earth. Kane's voice was steel. They already have. Retreat isn't containment. It's surrender. And you know what the Dominion does to those who surrender. Before Seraphan could respond, another voice cut in, an older, cold-toned counselor from the Dreadnought Dominion, one of the more powerful species within the chamber. Earth has dragged us into its personal war. The Kethri fleet came for them, not for us. If humanity withdraws, perhaps peace can still be negotiated. The words struck the chamber like a spark in dry tinder. Some nodded in fearful agreement. Others hissed in disgust. But Gallagher felt her blood run cold. She muttered under her breath, too low for the council to hear. They're going to sell us out. Kane heard her. He didn't flinch. The Dreadnought counselor leaned closer, voice dripping with calculation. We have already opened channels with the Dominion. They are willing to discuss terms, if humanity's fleet is removed from the equation. The chamber erupted again, half the council furious, half desperate for survival. Seraphan tried to shout them down, but the damage was done. The betrayal hung in the air, unmistakable. On the bridge of the Resolute, Gallagher stared at Kane, searching for his reaction. He didn't move, but the muscle in his jaw tightened until it looked carved from stone. He spoke each word precise. Transmit to the council. If they think they can bargain with butchers, let them. But humanity won't stand down. Not today. Not ever. The comms cut. The chamber's noise faded, leaving only the hum of failing consoles and the distant thrum of engines. Gallagher turned on him, fury breaking through her restraint. They're abandoning us. They'll hand you over and watch the Dominion tear Earth apart just to save their own skins. And you're still going to bleed our fleet dry for them? Kane turned to her at last, his eyes sharp, haunted. If we pull back now, Ruth, the Kethri don't stop at Earth. They'll burn through colony after colony, and the council knows it. They're too afraid to admit it, but they're not the ones holding the line. We are. If we fail, no one else fights. She stepped closer, her voice low but cutting. You're going to kill all of us trying to be a savior. He didn't blink. Better we die fighting than live long enough to kneel. The weight of his words settled between them, heavy and unyielding. Gallagher turned away, fists clenched, but didn't argue further. The alarms blared again, dragging them back into the moment. The enemy flagship's energy arrays flared bright, preparing for another charge. Shields won't hold a second blast, the tactical officer warned. If that wave hits, we lose everything. Kane's mind raced. He could almost feel the hum of his ship, the lives tethered to his next command. Bring the fleet in close. Overlapping shields. Concentrate fire on their weapon arrays. We don't stop firing until something breaks. The dreadnoughts obeyed, maneuvering with grinding precision. The void erupted again, cannons thundering as beams of light tore across the dark. Kethri shields flickered, their twisted hulls shuddering under the assault. And then, the superweapon fired. The second wave was worse. Council fleets scattered, shields collapsing in cascades of light. Dozens of ships winked out in seconds, leaving nothing but drifting fire. But where the Council fleets disintegrated, the dreadnought wall of Earth held. Barely. One dreadnought screamed across comms as its shielding failed, hull rupturing under the energy storm. Its captain's voice was ragged but steady. For Earth. Then the ship rammed headlong into a Kethri battleship, detonating in a blast that lit the void brighter than a sun. The bridge of the Resolute fell silent as the light faded. Gallagher's throat tightened, her voice trembling as she whispered, "How many more do we lose before this ends?" Kane stared at the flagship, its weapon arrays already cycling for another strike. His answer was low, almost to himself. As many as it takes. But then the sensor officer spoke, voice filled with dread. "Admiral, We're only fighting their vanguard. The words froze everyone on the bridge. Gallagher turned sharply, her face pale. What are you saying? The officer's hands shook over the console. Long-range scans confirm, this isn't their full fleet. The real Armada is still inbound. The bridge went silent, save for the hum of failing systems and the echo of those words. Humanity had just survived the impossible. And yet, the true storm had not even arrived. The bridge of the Resolute was quiet in the moments after the sensor officer's words. The idea hung in the air, heavy as gravity itself. If the fleet that had just nearly annihilated them was only the vanguard, then the real fight had not even begun. Admiral Kane stared at the flickering display, the outlines of wrecked council fleets glowing in fading red. His crew waited, all eyes on him, as though his voice alone could anchor them against despair. Commander Gallagher broke the silence first. Her tone was sharp, but underneath it lay something raw, almost pleading. Marcus, we can't hold against what's coming. Not alone. We've lost too much already. He didn't turn to her. His gaze stayed locked on the tactical display. We don't run. Her hands clenched at her sides. I'm not saying run. I'm saying, we can't keep fighting for people who are trying to sell us out. Kane finally looked at her, his eyes tired, shadowed, but burning. This isn't about the Council anymore. This is about every world in the path of that Armada. Earth stands or the galaxy falls with it. The comms flared alive before Gallagher could answer. It wasn't a council call this time. Dozens of small, scattered voices filled the channel. Captains, soldiers, even civilians from fractured fleets and stations. We saw you hold the line. Our council betrayed us. We won't follow them. Earth fights. So we fight too. The holomap shifted as new signatures appeared. Alien ships, damaged, disorganized, but rallying. Yari strike craft, Elvari frigates, mercenary raiders, even civilian carriers retrofitted with weapons. None of them had the numbers alone. But together, under Earth's lead, they began to form something the galaxy had not seen in centuries. Kane's voice filled the channel, steady and ironclad. This is Admiral Kane of Earth's fleet. The Dominion brought war to your doorsteps. The Council would rather kneel than resist. But we will not kneel. We'll strike them here now before their full Armada arrives. If you stand with us, then stand. If not, watch everything you love burn. A pause, then ship after ship locked formation with Earth's dreadnoughts. The patchwork coalition came alive. Gallagher's throat tightened as she whispered, "They're following you." Kane didn't look at her. His gaze was on the looming flagship, its superweapon arrays glowing again. "They're following Earth." The Dominion Armada emerged from the dark, ship after ship unfolding from warp like a storm without end. It was a sight meant to crush hope. But the coalition held formation. Humanity's dreadnoughts led the center, alien fleets tightening the line around them. The battle erupted. The void lit with fire as Earth's dreadnoughts unleashed their full arsenal, every cannon thundering, every missile bay roaring. Alien fleets darted through the chaos, striking where human ships created openings. Kethari vessels swarmed, their numbers overwhelming, their weapon fire relentless. The Resolute took hit after hit, shields bleeding energy. Gallagher barked orders, her voice sharp, anchoring crews as they fought to keep the ship alive. Fighters screamed through the wreckage, cutting apart Dominion drones. And still, the Kethari flagship prepared its superweapon. "Admiral," the sensor officer cried, "they're charging again. If it fires, we lose the fleet." Kane stood tall, voice like steel. "Then we take the flagship. All ships, concentrate fire. Don't let that weapon fire." The coalition surged. Alien frigates sacrificed themselves, ramming into Dominion escorts. Human dreadnoughts punched through the line, their overlapping shields glowing white from the strain. Every surviving gun focused on the flagship. The Kethari arrays flared brighter, the charge almost complete. Gallagher turned to Kane, urgency breaking into her voice. "Marcus, even if we break their shields, we'll never pierce the core in time." His jaw clenched. "Then we go through it." The Resolute roared forward, its engines screaming. The crew braced as the ship accelerated toward the flagship. Dreadnought cannons fired point blank, tearing holes in the enemy's shields, but the weapon arrays still glowed. Kane's voice rang out across the bridge. "Prepare the main railgun. Overcharge it." The weapons officer's eyes went wide. "At this range? Admiral, it'll rip our ship apart." "Do it," Kane snapped. Gallagher stepped closer, her voice raw. "Marcus, if you fire that, there's no guarantee we survive." He met her eyes, the ghost of a tired smile breaking through. "There's no guarantee anyway." The Resolute's railgun hummed, the energy tearing through its core, shaking the entire ship as though it were about to split in half. The Kethri weapon arrays reached full charge. Kane dropped his hand. Fire. The railgun roared, a lance of energy and steel ripping through the void. It struck the flagship dead center, piercing its shields, tearing into its core. For a heartbeat, the Kethri superweapon glowed brighter than a star. Then it imploded, detonating in a shockwave that tore through the Dominion fleet. The explosion consumed the flagship and dozens of surrounding warships. The wave slammed into the Resolute, hurling it backward, systems failing, lights flickering. The crew clung to rails, gravity cutting in and out, consoles sparking. When the light finally faded, the flagship was gone. The Kethri formation wavered, scattered, then broke. The Armada began to retreat, their lines collapsing without the anchor of their weapon. The void fell quiet, littered with wreckage and the drifting remains of ships, human, alien, and Dominion alike. The coalition had held. Humanity had led them through the fire. On the bridge, Gallagher pushed herself up, coughing through the smoke. We did it. Kane was still standing, hand gripping the rail, his uniform burned and bloodied. His voice was quiet, carrying the weight of everything they had lost. No, we survived. That's not the same thing. The crew bowed their heads, the cost pressing heavy on their hearts. Later, when the council reconvened, they offered Earth a seat among them, a reward wrapped in politics. Kane refused. His voice echoed across the chamber, steady and final. Earth does not ask permission. Not from you, not from anyone. We will stand. And if the Dominion returns, you'll know where to find us. The chamber fell into silence. Not fear this time, but respect. Even awe. But on the Resolute's bridge, long after the battle was won, Kane studied a quiet sensor report that had slipped through the chaos. A faint signal deep in uncharted space. Not Kethri. Something else. He closed the display, his jaw tightening. The war was over, for now. But something larger stirred beyond the stars. And Earth would be ready.